News of the miracle spread faster than the family could have imagined. Within days, the village that had once been cloaked in sorrow was filled with reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers who traveled miles just to see the German shepherd that had saved a baby from being buried alive. Headlines called him the dog who defied death and the guardian angel with 4 legs. Newspapers printed his picture beside the baby's, and television crews knocked at the family's door, begging for interviews. Though overwhelmed, the parents never refused to tell the story, because to them, every retelling was not just about their child, it was about honoring Rex. They would recount how the church had fallen silent, how everyone believed the baby gone, how despair had taken root, until Rex barked. And each time, their voices cracked when they admitted, "Without him, we would have buried our son alive." Neighbors who had known the family for years stopped by daily, bringing food, gifts, and tears of gratitude, as if the miracle had touched them personally. Children in the village began calling Rex the angel dog, and whenever he walked by with his family, people would stop in their tracks, bowing their heads in quiet respect or reaching out to pat him gently as though he were sacred. Rex, however, carried himself with the same calm dignity he always had. He accepted the attention, but his eyes never strayed far from the baby. Day after day, he remained by the crib, his head resting on his paws, ears pricking at every sigh, every movement. If the child whimpered in the night, Rex would be there first, nudging the parents awake with his cold nose, ensuring they never missed a moment. As months passed, the baby grew stronger, his cheeks round with health, his laughter filling the home that had once been haunted by grief. He learned to crawl, then to walk, always clinging to Rex's fur for balance. The dog bore the small hands tugging at his coat with infinite patience, guiding the boy through his first unsteady steps. When the boy fell, Rex nudged him back up with his nose, staying close until the child was steady again. Their bond became something the parents often described as unbreakable, as if the moment of life reclaimed in that coffin had tied them together forever. Wherever the boy went, Rex followed, out to the yard, into the fields, even sitting beneath him when he played with toys on the floor. The family often joked that Rex was less a dog and more a shadow of protection. Every birthday of the child turned into a celebration, not only of his life, but of Rex's heroism. Friends and family gathered, raising their glasses not just for the boy, but for the dog who had ensured he was still there to blow out candles. "You gave us back our son," the father would say every year, voice trembling, hand resting on Rex's back. The mother would add through tears, "He is not our pet. He is our guardian angel." Guests would nod, their eyes wet, for no one could deny the truth of those words. And Rex, tail wagging gently, would lie at the boy's feet, as if understanding that all the joy and laughter in that home was because he had once refused to be silent. The story reached far beyond the village. Letters arrived from strangers across the country, thanking Rex for proving that miracles still existed in the world. Some sent collars, toys, or paintings of the German shepherd with wings. Others wrote long notes about how the story had renewed their faith or reminded them of their own dogs who had saved them in small, quiet ways. The family placed every letter in a box, a treasure chest of gratitude that one day the boy would read for himself. But until then, he needed no reminders. He grew up knowing the truth from the lips of his parents and the steady gaze of the dog who never left his side. He was alive because Rex had barked when no one else believed. The funeral was heavy with sorrow, the kind of silence that seemed to press down on every heart in the small church. The air smelled faintly of lilies and candle wax, their sweet fragrance unable to mask the bitterness of loss. A young couple stood near the front, their faces pale, drained of all color, their eyes swollen from endless tears. Their arms hung empty at their sides, but every motion betrayed the ache of what they once cradled. At the center of the altar, a small white coffin rested, draped in delicate flowers, so small it looked more like a cradle than a vessel of finality. People shifted in the wooden pews, whispering prayers under their breath, their words quiet, fragile, as though even sound itself could shatter the already broken family. Outside the church doors, Loyal Rex, the family's German shepherd, lay with his head pressed against the threshold. He had always been their protector, watching over the baby from the moment it was brought home, never straying far, never allowing a stranger too close. Today, however, something stirred uneasily within him. His ears flicked, his chest rumbled with soft whines, and his amber eyes never left the coffin, as though some invisible thread tied him to the child inside. The priest's voice rose gently, solemn and deliberate, each word of farewell echoing off the old stone walls. "We gather," he said, "to return this little one to the embrace of heaven." His words seemed to float in the air like smoke, unable to settle, unable to comfort. The mother clutched her husband's hand, her lips trembling, her breath unsteady. He tried to hold firm for her, but even his frame shook with unspoken grief. A sob cracked the silence, quickly muffled by a handkerchief, then another, until the church was filled with the sound of quiet weeping. Yet through it all, Rex grew restless. His nails scraped lightly against the wooden floor as he shifted his weight. His ears twitched toward the coffin as though hearing something no one else could. Then, unable to contain himself, he pushed his way through the open door. The sudden movement startled a few mourners, heads turning sharply, but no one rose to stop him. They knew this dog belonged to the family, knew he was tied to their lives as much as any human. His paws echoed against the floor as he padded down the aisle, eyes fixed forward, posture tense. He did not move like a curious animal, he moved with purpose. The moment he reached the front, the silence broke. Rex's throat rumbled with a low growl, deep and unnatural in such a sacred space. The priest faltered, his words caught mid-prayer, and the congregation stiffened, their eyes darting to the dog. The growl grew, rising into sharp, insistent barks that bounced off the high ceiling. People gasped, some muttering that the dog was mad with grief, others whispering about omens and spirits. But Rex would not stop. He circled the coffin, tail stiff, ears flattened, every bark a cry of alarm, as if something inside demanded to be revealed. The mother's face drained of color, her heart pounding in sudden fear, not of the dog, but of what he seemed to know. The father took an uncertain step forward, torn between silencing the animal and listening to what instinct screamed, "Trust him." Rex pawed at the coffin's side, his claws scraping the polished wood, barking louder, sharper, his eyes fixed not on the people, not on the priest, but on the tiny box that everyone else believed was a tomb. The air inside the church grew heavier with every bark, each echo slamming into the stone walls like a warning bell. The mourners shifted uncomfortably, some whispering prayers more urgently now, others frowning at the disruption. A few voices rose in protest. "Get the dog out. It's not right." But their pleas were drowned out by Rex's frantic cries. His claws scraped the coffin again, sharp and desperate, leaving faint marks on the polished surface. The priest, rattled by the sudden chaos, raised his hands to calm the crowd, but his voice faltered under the dog's determination. The mother clung to her husband's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and hope she did not dare name. "Why is he doing this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Her husband stared at the coffin, his jaw tight, torn between grief and an unsettling suspicion that began to gnaw at his soul. Rex's body trembled, not from fear but from urgency, as if his entire being demanded that someone listen. His eyes locked onto the father's, unblinking, burning with something raw and insistent. For a moment, man and dog stood frozen in silent communication, and in that moment, the father felt a surge of clarity. This was no madness, no mere grief-stricken confusion. Rex was trying to tell them something. The father's breath caught in his throat, his heart hammering as if it might burst. He stepped closer, his hand hovering above the coffin's lid. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some gasping, others muttering in disbelief. The priest frowned, shaking his head, but the father could not be swayed. His wife's grip tightened, her voice breaking into a plea. "Don't please, what if?" But her words trailed off into silence, for in her eyes, too, the spark of impossible hope began to flicker. Slowly, with trembling fingers, the father laid his hand on the edge of the coffin. The room fell silent, the kind of silence so deep it felt alive, as though the very air held its breath. Rex stopped barking for the first time since entering, lowering himself onto his haunches, but his eyes never wavered, his chest still heaving with urgency. The father pressed his lips together, his body shaking as he lifted the lid. The hinges creaked, a sound that sliced through the church and into every heart. Gasps filled the air as the coffin opened, and the mother covered her mouth, bracing herself for the cruel image she had already seen once before. But what met their eyes was not silence, not finality. Instead, a faint sound stirred within, the tiniest whimper, fragile as a feather. The baby's chest rose, shallow but steady, lips trembling as a faint cry escaped. For a moment, no one moved. The world seemed to collapse into that single sound. Then the mother screamed, stumbling forward, nearly falling as she reached for her child. Tears poured down her face as she touched the baby's skin, warm, alive, impossible. The father's knees buckled, and he caught himself against the coffin, his entire body shaking with disbelief. The crowd erupted, some crying out in shock, others crossing themselves over and over, voices trembling between prayers and exclamations of awe. The priest staggered back, his Bible slipping from his hand, his lips murmuring words that faltered with astonishment. In the center of it all, Rex let out a low, relieved whine, his tail thumping once against the floor, as if to say, "I told you."